before we talk about all the injuries and some other storylines for this week, how about just a quick thought? Last time we saw the Irish against Stanford, fumbled the opening kickoff, but the team responded pretty well, which I think is very important going into this week, another home game with an opponent that's not overly attractive.
Yeah, that was the first question that I asked Marcus Freeman in his post-game press conference way back when after that game against the Cardinals. It was, hey, you guys were on the ropes early. How do you respond to that? What did you like about the response? Because we know how they responded. Notre Dame scores the next 21 points in that game. I think it told us a lot about these Irish because you think back to the Northern Illinois game and all of a sudden Northern Illinois strikes and it's 7-7, and you shouldn't be in a place where you're thinking, oh no, is this game going to go like that early, Darren? You should be able to say, okay, Notre Dame's the better team at home. They're going to take control of this thing and win the football game. That didn't happen. You're down 3-0 against Miami, Ohio a couple weeks later, and you're thinking the same thing. Is this going to go that way? They eventually kind of took a hold of that one. But to do it against a ranked Louisville team, and I get it, Cardinal just lost to SMU, so that win looks the Notre Dame's win over the Cardinals. But Notre Dame's win over Texas A&M looks pretty good right now. That's a different story. But at the time, Darren, Louisville is ranked number 15 in the country. They're unbeaten. It's a team that beats you last year. And for Notre Dame to just say, you know what, we're down early, we're going to score the next 21 points. We're going to because at that point, Darren, they didn't trail again, obviously. So good response. And I think it says a lot about what they did in that game, but also moving forward that they can kind of respond to certain things like that mid-game.
Marcus Freeman meeting the media on Monday. No surprise. Boubacar Traore, the Irish defensive end, lost for the season due to a torn ACL suffered in the Louisville game. Tyler, two-part question. How significant is the loss of Traore to this defense, and who fills in? Who fills, I guess, takes up the slack lost with Traore now out?
Well, it's a tremendous loss, and you have to factor in the fact that Jordan Botelho was lost at the same position a couple weeks prior. So you've lost your top two players at really one of the most important positions on a defense. You know, you think back to what Isaiah Foskey was doing for a couple of years in a row, 11 sacks. Notre Dame hasn't had that since Foskey left, but Botelho was starting to look like that guy in the first 2.5 games. Traore has looked like that guy in 4 games and change. You lose both of them. I'm not really sure where this position goes. Obviously, you're going to turn to Junior Tui Halamaka, the junior who started his career as a linebacker. They moved him to defensive end. You could see that he was struggling to try to make that transition. It wasn't clicking for him. Seemed like it clicked in that Miami, Ohio game. If that's the guy that you get there, then you have a true starter. You have a number 1 Viper defensive end in Junior Tui Halamaka. The question is, are you going to get that from him all of the time? I don't think he played that way against Louisville, for instance. What are you going to get from him against Stanford? What are you going to get from him against Georgia Tech, Navy, going on and on? You know, this is a long football season. I'm not sure we've seen a Junior Tui Halamaka who can sustain an elite level of play. We haven't, quite frankly, and that's why he hasn't gotten the opportunity that he's getting now because of some injuries. You have him, and then you have a freshman in Logan Thomas, who Marcus Freeman spoke about him in his Monday press conference and said, look, comes from a great high school, talented guy. You could see early on when he got to campus that he was not physically ready, but now he has to be. He's got to be mentally and physically as ready as he can be because he's your number 2 guy behind Tui Halamaka. I think the oddball here, Darren, is Joshua Burnham is a guy that can play both sides. And Freeman said he can play strong side defensive end, which is where we've seen him the last couple of seasons. He can play, or this season primarily in particular, he could play Viper because he's done that in the past with Junior Tui Halamaka, with Jordan Botelho, and kind of a trio tandem last year. So it's kind of all hands on deck to answer your question, Darren. It's going to start with Tui Halamaka. We'll see what the freshman can do in relief and backup role to him. And if you need to bring Joshua Burnham over to that side, you got to remember that he's a guy coming back from an ankle injury, though, so you don't know exactly what he's got. The bye week came at a great time for him because I think we're going to see a lot of Joshua Burnham moving forward, just kind of given that, like I said, it is an all-hands-on-deck situation for Notre Dame at defensive end right now. Yeah, I'm going to have to read this off, Darren, because Marcus Freeman gave us a bunch today, and we have a story at blueandgold.com. You should definitely go check that out. But 3 guys who are questionable for this week's game against Stanford: Cooper Flanagan with the left ankle injury, Gabriel Rubio, who obviously hasn't played at all this season, left foot injury, and Billy Strouth is coming back from that right ankle injury. All of those guys are questionable. If I had to guess if any of them were going to play, I'm not sure. Questionable is obviously not as great as probable, but I guess it's a little better than doubtful. But these are the guys who are in a little bit better of a situation. Joshua Burnham has been dealing with a left ankle injury. He played a little bit last time Notre Dame was out against Louisville, but I believe it was only a handful of snaps. So to get him back, considering what's happening with Traore at the defensive end position, he's the guy that Marcus Freeman said can cross-train. He can play Viper if he needs to. Would be a huge help if Burnham is available. Christian Gray didn't play at all against Louisville, suited up, tried to give it a go in pregame warmups and said, nope, this shoulder strain ain't working for me. So that's why we saw Leonard Moore, the true freshman, play so much. He's probable. And Jordan Faison, we saw him get injured on a really nice spin move, Darren, on that play. That's what Notre Dame has been missing for as long as he's been out with the left ankle injury since kind of flaring that up against Texas A&M. Notre Dame needs that type of playmaking ability at wide receiver. Faison gives it to Notre Dame. He's probable, but man, with an ankle injury like that, we saw it in the Louisville game. As soon as you flare it up again, it's basically a major setback. And I think the bye week came at a perfect time for him. Bye week came at a perfect time for all of these guys, really. To have the opportunity for all of 6 of these guys to play, I get it. 3 of them are in the category of probable as opposed to questionable with those first 3. If you can get half of them to play, like get all the probable guys to play, and then maybe you have Cooper Flanagan, I think Notre Dame, it would be a huge help to have him at the tight end position, considering Mitchell Evans is still coming back from the ACL, and you're not sure if he's a full go. Eli Raridan, you haven't gotten much from him. You need Cooper Flanagan to be in the mix. And then Gabriel Rubio, what a perfect time for him to come back following the bye week. And then you say, okay, we have a little bit more defensive tackle depth at this point, because outside of Riley Mills, Howard Cross, and Jason Anye, I get it. Donovan Heinisch is playing a lot of football right now, but Gabriel Rubio was a highly recruited player. You saw him play early in his career. That would be a big get. So, yeah, it's a full injury report, Darren, which is usually not a great thing, but considering we're already into October, that's kind of par for the course for college football.